Hi, I'm Rod Moffat, and I'm concerned about the parlous state of our federal politics. It is neither melodramatic nor exaggeration to suggest that our current political malady is the product of the coalition government's overtly neoliberal agenda, which singularly represents the greatest assault on our democratic process since federation. Neoliberalism is a corrupt hybrid politico-economic doctrine committed to the elimination of government regulations, trade barriers, tariffs and labour protections, and possibly even government itself. It advocates privatisation of public assets and utilities and significantly less spending on social services and programs. The Coalition's primary objective is to ensure unfettered rule of the market. Like its conservative ilk the world over, the Coalition is committed to unburdening its wealthy benefactors from what it calls red tape, a euphemism for government regulations and compliance obligations. It has demonstrated total contempt for the harmful social consequences that inevitably accrue when unfettered capitalism is permitted to flourish. The Coalition's aim is to facilitate total global freedom of movement for capital, goods and services, underpinned and supported by dubious so-called free trade agreements that largely benefit a select few, and which are not thoroughly modelled to determine the net public benefit and likely economy-wide implications, including the probable and inevitable detrimental effects on domestic enterprises that are exposed to the competitive onslaught of cheap imports from international leviathans like China. It sheds no tears over likely job displacements and the inflationary effect export demand imposes on domestic soft commodity staple foods like red meats, fresh fruit and vegetables, and hard commodities like gas, a primary input into electricity generation costs. A particularly odious coalition policy objective is its determination to reduce public expenditure on social services, such as healthcare, education, welfare and pensions. The coalition would have the nation believe that individual responsibility is key to self-advancement, and a governmental focus on services and the public good merely weakens the individual's ability to succeed in the free market by being heavily constrained by controls of the state. That's its version of tough love. By eliminating the concepts of the public good and community and replacing them with individual responsibility and mutual obligation and trite new slogans like "Let's keep Australians working," the Coalition seeks to pressure the poorest and most disadvantaged in our society to find their own solutions to their lack of education, job prospects, healthcare and housing needs. The notion that everyone can pull themselves up by their bootstraps is, for a variety of non-controllable reasons, an unachievable aspiration for many, as demonstrated by the stagnation in social mobility and wages this nation is currently experiencing, and which is the worst experience in over a quarter of a century. The doctrinaire neoliberal arrogance of the Coalition has become breathtakingly obvious as it perpetuates its classist views and policies, dividing society into lifters and leaners and lauding hard-working Australians, while at the same time pouring scorn on the so-called non-producers, welfare recipients and pensioners. In short, the neoliberal Coalition commodifies people and categorises them as either profit makers or profit takers. Its fanatical determination to reduce recurrent annual government expenditure on social services is problematic to the maintenance of an equitable society and serves only to fan the raging fire of inequality. Clearly, by its actions, it is patently obvious the Coalition resents social service spending and considers it a profligate form of wealth redistribution, despite the fact that salary pay-as-you-go taxpayers directly contribute approximately 55% of all government taxation revenue, in addition to the 17% they contribute via GST and the 2% that it is derived from their superannuation contributions. In total, workers contribute nearly 3/4 of all government tax revenue, versus the paltry 18% contributed by the 2/3 of companies that actually pay any tax at all. Corporate welfare has become endemic under the neoliberal coalition and can only be addressed by comprehensive root and branch structural reform of our tax system. But is this likely to happen? Well, hardly. Certainly not when one of the coalition's key priorities is deregulation, to dismantle as many of the constraints on the private sector as it possibly can, whilst it clings tenuously to office. Under the mantra of smaller government and red tape reduction, the coalition has systematically set about dismantling our government by reducing compliance and monitoring resources, in addition to diluting, winding back and removing regulatory constraints on the capitalist market, including those intended to monitor the financial sector, to protect consumers' rights, to maintain on-the-job safety for workers, to ensure the rights of workers to organise and collectively bargain, and those established to preserve and protect the environment. It should be understood that every measure that minimises the power of government serves only to maximise the power of corporate interest, which in turn then pressure government to legislate measures that further entrench and preserve their position of privilege and power in the market. A favourite cash cow for neoliberal government is the sale of long-held public assets and utilities and services, all funded by the blood, sweat and toil of previous generations of taxpayers. The favoured modus operandi of neoliberals the world over is to privatise profitable public assets and services, but ironically socialise the cost and risk. Not surprisingly, the coalition is an enthusiastic exponent, and through its so-called asset recycling program has provided financial inducements to the states and territories to encourage them to sell off the farm. In what amounts to a giant Ponzi scheme, and under the guise of increased efficiency and contestability, governments, sadly of all persuasions, have systematically asset stripped and looted Commonwealth and state-owned assets and utilities and services, and then fire-saled them to an eager waiting queue of friendly private investors. The proceeds of such sales have opportunistically provided windfall capital to prop up government budgets and to finance new infrastructure projects, principally aimed at seducing constituents at the ballot box. This has had the effect of concentrating wealth in fewer hands and has inflicted the public with enduring high costs for a range of essential public services, such as education, energy, public transport, healthcare and roads. Ironically, whilst the largest undervalued privatised assets have proven a financial bonanza to the grateful beneficiaries, governments have forfeited lucrative recurrent annual revenue stream that these assets once reliably provided. Predictably, the revenue shortfall has been met by the public, either by way of new taxation measures or reduced provision of government services, or both. I don't know about you, but I don't consider the coalition's policies to be those of a socially inclusive, progressive government focused on the public good and the national interest. Essentially, the incumbent government is a kleptocratic plutocracy driven by an odious neoliberal agenda and beholden to powerful corporate benefactors. And you, as my fellow Australians, must understand its intentions and the implications to you personally, and decide whether this is the type of government you truly want to have stewardship of this nation and to remain at the helm, charting a course for the future. Thank you for listening to this video, and please share this message.